Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about the idea of the New York Knicks trading for Tobias Harris, as there's been some rumors surrounding him and the Philadelphia 76ers. Also, Bol Bol was released by the Orlando Magic. The Knicks, they need a big man, according to you guys. Should they sign him? And also, it sounds like Jeff Van Gundy, according to Sports Illustrated, is looking to get back into the coaching game and may start as an assistant coach. Well, we will dissect if Tom Thibodeau should bring him on as a part of the staff. But first, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel because we are 80 subscribers away from 26,500 subs here on the channel. If you're not subscribed, what are you doing? We put out videos every day on the New York Knicks. Really, 2 videos a day. This is video number 2. So subscribe, sub for Knicks Dubs. Let's get it started with some Tobias Harris trade rumors. I'm going to look into the past a little bit here and kind of try to project and maybe talk myself into trading for Tobias Harris. The Knicks had interest in Tobias Harris back in December of 2022. There was rumors that came out that they wanted to make a trade for him. Also, rumors have swirled around Tobias Harris in Philadelphia really since he's gotten there. It's always seemed like if the 76ers were going to make a trade for another star to complement Joel Embiid or James Harden, Tobias Harris and his contract was going to be the thing going out when something else was going to be coming in. So could the Knicks revisit the trade rumors that were circulating in December of 2022 and maybe go look to make a Tobias Harris trade happen? I don't hate it. This is what Ian Begley in December said. He said the Knicks at least talked internally about the idea of acquiring Tobias Harris via trade before their winning streak started, and obviously Harris having a nice game against the Knicks on Christmas Day. Tom Thibodeau spoke highly of him before the game, so that's just one name to keep an eye on. Just specifically to Harris, I know that he does have some fans in the organization. He's making a lot of money. It would be a big trade to pull off salary-wise, but it's at least something the Knicks have kicked around internally prior to this past winning streak. I think it's also important to note that Tom Thibodeau absolutely loves Tobias Harris. And this is kind of a rumor, but I think everyone knows it at this point. Tobias Harris is a favorite for Tom Thibodeau. This is what Tibbs said back in December when the New York Knicks played the Philadelphia 76ers. He went on to say, I think you look at that team, and obviously Embiid and Harden probably established, but I always thought Tobias Harris was one of the most underrated players in the league. And also, just a couple of days ago, Chris Persianen, I know I'm probably butchering his name. I'm sorry if you're watching this, my man. He works for Knicks Film School. He's a Knicks beat reporter. He does a lot of good stuff revolving around the New York Knicks. And he said on a podcast that Tom Thibodeau wanted to trade Julius Randle for Tobias Harris before the season. So you got Harris, a favorite of Tom Thibodeau, and according to Chris P. of the Knicks Film School, it sounded like Tibbs was on board for trading Randle for Harris. Harris is on a $39.2 million expiring deal, so you definitely want to tread lightly if you're going to make a move for Harris. I do assume if the Knicks do make a move for him, a long-term extension would be worked out. But I kind of agree with Tom Thibodeau that Tobias Harris, the Islip, New York native, is a little bit underrated. There's not a lot of people in this league that can average 19.6 points per game, 7 rebounds, 47% from the field, and 36.7% from downtown. The scoring dropped off a bit this year, but I blame that more on Doc Rivers and the offense that he was running, where he really just had Tobias Harris playing the corner boy role like Reggie Bullock was for the New York Knicks. If you put the ball in Harris's hands, he can create. He can shoot it. He can stop and pop. He can get to the cup. And he is a really good defender. And at 6'9" and only 31 years old, he is someone that I think the Knicks should potentially be interested in. And remember that report yesterday that we talked about from Fred Katz of The Athletic? The Knicks have been gauging the interest across the league for prime-aged veterans. Could Tobias Harris be a prime-aged veteran? One thing I do like about Harris is he could easily start at the small forward spot, and he would if he came to the Knicks. He'd give you that long, lanky wing that a lot of Knicks fans have wanted for quite some time. But he could also be your backup 4. And what I mean by that is Maybe at about the 8-minute mark in the quarter, Josh Hart subs in for Tobias Harris. And then with 4 minutes left in the quarter, when Julius Randle comes out, you could have a lineup with Josh Hart at the 3 and Tobias Harris at the 4, who's played a lot of 4 alongside Joel Embiid. I think it'd be a really good chip that the Knicks could use, and it would give them some lineup versatility. And also another guy that's almost a 40% shooter from downtown. You can never have too many of those guys. He is 31, and he's on an expiring deal. But he's a good player, and he's a New York native. And I think he would be a good fit as well. Should the Knicks trade for Tobias Harris, you'd include Evan Fournier. Maybe it's RJ Barrett. Maybe it's Julius Randle. I don't know. I'll leave it up to you. Do you want the Knicks to trade for Tobias Harris? Type T for trade. Type P for pass. Story number 2 in today's show. There's been a lot of people that have messaged me on Instagram and Twitter asking me, yo, Marsh, should the New York Knicks sign Bol Bol after he was released by the Orlando Magic? And I thought about it for a couple of days now at this point, and I wouldn't be mad if they gave the kid a training camp offer. I mean, when you talk about talent and upside, Bol Bol has a lot of it. 7 foot, 5? 7'4"? He's like Victor Wembanyama, but like the CVS version compared to the Walgreens version. He's not as skilled. He's not as talented, but he flashes some of those crazy traits where he can pump fake off the three-point line, put it on the deck in Euro, and get to the cup. He's got some guard skills for a guy that's 7'5". He just hasn't been able to make it work in the NBA. This is what the Orlando Sentinel said about Bol Bol after he was released by the Magic. Quote, his 1,505 minutes played in a Magic uniform more than tripled his career total minutes of 328 that he played in the first 3 years in the NBA. Bol's season, however, was up and down, though he remained a fan favorite at the Amway Center. At one point, he made 32 consecutive starts, but came off the bench during a stretch of games from mid-January through mid-March. Then, he was out of the rotation completely for 7 games before closing the season back on the court. Bol Bol has to be one of the more intriguing players in the NBA. I mean, when you look at what he's done over the past 4 seasons, none of it is extremely eye-popping, right? But he is a guy that's had some splash games. I mean, he's had 6 games this past season for the Orlando Magic where he scored more than 20 points. He had 15 games where he scored more than 15 points. And he had 7 games where he had more than 10 rebounds. And he's also a guy that had 4 blocks 5 times. He had 3 or more blocks 11 times. And he had 2 or more blocks 24 times. So he can stretch the floor. He can block. He can protect the goal. I wouldn't hate the idea of taking a flyer on Mr. Bol Bol, but the Knicks are somewhat good at that center position with Mitchell Robinson holding that spot down in the starting lineup. I'm a big fan of Isaiah Hartenstein, even though he commits one of those dumb fouls a game and he looks around like, wasn't me. I also like Jericho Sims as a young player. I think he's an interesting guy. They got him on a cheap quality deal, but I wouldn't mind a training camp invite. Maybe see if you get anything out of the young kid. Should the Knicks sign Bol Bol in NBA free agency for the veteran minimum? What do you think? Type Y for yes, type N for no. We're going to close out today's show with a fun story. Reports coming out via Sports Illustrated that Jeff Van Gundy is looking into coaching again after being laid off by ESPN. We actually talked about at one point maybe he could be a 3-man booth next to Walt Clyde Frazier and Mike Breen, even though I don't really want to rip up the duo of Breen and Frazier. This is what Chris Mannix, though, of SI said about it. He said Jeff Van Gundy has been actively exploring a return to coaching, sources tell SI. He has been discussing assistant coaching jobs with several teams. Dallas and Boston discussed roles with Van Gundy before beefing up their staff. There's also some mutual interest in Washington. Look, if Jeff Van Gundy wants to be an assistant coach in the NBA yet again, get him on the bench, Tom Thibodeau. Let's get it back together. Let's bring the 90s Knicks vibes back to the Garden. But this time, Jeff Van Gundy is an assistant for Tom Thibodeau. I think it would be pretty cool. I know that some people don't have the best feelings about Van Gundy as a Knick, that he quit on the Knicks, that he trashes the Knicks on ESPN. If you're mad about what he says about the Knicks on ESPN, that might be more of a you problem, as that is his job to talk about games that are going on. And let's be honest, before these past 2-3 years, The Knicks haven't been that good for a very long time. I think it would be cool to see Jeff Van Gundy and Tom Thibodeau back on the bench. Reports are they're still really good friends. They talk all the time. Maybe they've already talked about this idea. Maybe they said no. Maybe they haven't talked about it yet. Maybe they will talk about it. What do you think, though? Do you want Van Gundy as an assistant coach for the New York Knicks? I'm sure there's some of you watching that want him as the head coach of the New York Knicks, but do you want him on the staff? Type 1 for yes, type 2 for no. I want to hear from you down below. As always, thank you and appreciate you guys for tuning in to Knicks Now. I know everyone's got really busy schedules these days, and for you guys to just take a couple of minutes out of those days to spend it here with us on Knicks Now, I appreciate you. We've been putting out 2 videos every day for the past week and a half, and we continue to do so because you guys are watching, you guys are engaging in the content, and the numbers are awesome. So thank you to everybody that has made watching Knicks Now a part of your daily habits. As always, thank you, and we'll see you later.